What is up, guys? Welcome back to the channel, and today I'm going to be discussing something pretty exciting with you guys because last night I was lucky enough to attend a Meet the Staff event at the Riverside Stadium where Boro fans were able to have a meet and greet with our new coaching team. Of course, our new manager and head coach Rob Edwards, our assistant manager, as he was introduced, Eddie Vivesh, and our first team coach Harry Watling. This was a really good event. Fans were able to submit questions that were randomly pulled out of a hat. So some questions got asked, some didn't. But it was really good to hear from all three of our new coaching staff members. And I think mostly it was good to actually get a gauge of their personality more than anything, because we've seen a lot of press so far. We've seen a lot from Rob Edwards. Obviously, he's spoke quite a lot already about Middlesbrough and what he wants to do here, the squad, etc., among much more. So it was really good to, I guess, get a gauge of his personality, but it was especially good to hear from Eddie Vivesh and Harry Watling, who came across incredibly well. And today I'm going to try and run through as many things that I can remember from last night, what was discussed, what was asked. My notes aren't particularly structured, so I'm just going to try and run through everything I can, best I can, so hopefully you can follow it. And if you do have any additional questions about things that might jog my memory, let me know in the comments, as things from last night just keep kind of popping back into my head throughout the day. So I'll try and remember and put across as much from last night as I can. But yeah, the initial thoughts and feelings coming away from the event was that it was very, very good. And maybe it was because it was the first time hearing from Eddie Vivesh. It was the first time hearing from Harry Watling, but I particularly enjoyed hearing from the pair of them. I think with Rob Edwards, a lot of the stuff that he discussed is stuff we've already heard him mention. He did elaborate on a few things, which I will get onto, but we already kind of know what we're getting with Rob Edwards. We know how he speaks, we know his personality. He's a very open, emotional guy, but it was very, very intriguing to hear from Eddie Vivesh and Harry Watling. Now, Harry Watling is an incredibly funny guy. He has got a fantastic sense of humour, and I can see why in and around the training ground and in and around the players, he would be someone who would be fantastic at, keeping the mood positive, being a bit of a joker. But that's not all he is. For a guy who is really, really young, I was really impressed by how intelligent he came across. His experience at coaching at a variety of different clubs for his age is already really, really crazy. He got his first job at Chelsea when he was 19 years old. He come across Eddie Vivesh at Chelsea during that time as well, so they did cross paths at Chelsea. Harry did say Eddie Vivesh was one of the coaches he looked up to when he first got that role at Chelsea, and that's what makes working with him now even more special. But Harry Watling especially, I think for his age, seems like a really intelligent, exciting young coach, and I thought he was a really, really good listen last night and a really, really good character. And Eddie Vivesh was just, when you see one of them experienced people and you're sort of on their every word, you're hooked on their every word, he was exactly what I expected and hoped he would be. When someone comes in and they're massively experienced and they've had relative success throughout their career, you kind of hope they live up to the billing. And hearing Eddie Vivesh speak last night, you can just tell he has seen it all. He is ridiculously experienced and has so much knowledge of the game as well. His knowledge really came across. His experience really came across. And I could just tell he was someone who knew what he was talking about and will definitely bring a very, very useful perspective, I think, on what Boro want to do and trying to, I think how he described it, bring Rob's vision to life. So I thought as much as Rob Edwards continued to impress and he spoke really well, he was such a great guy to meet, a really, really lovely guy. He's not different to what you see in interviews. That was something that really come across to me. He is exactly the same in person as he is in interviews, and that was really, really good. But I think Eddie and Harry probably came across just as, if not even more impressive than Rob Edwards himself. So I really, really think from meeting them and hearing from them, he's surrounded himself with two fantastic coaches. I really, really believe that. And the one thing that struck me more than anything was they are all so different to one another. They are so different. Like Harry Watling and Eddie Vivesh could not have been any more different. They couldn't be any more opposite. They're also very different to Rob himself, and I just really like the difference and the variety of each of their characters, their style of coaching, I guess their roles. I'd like to hope that the variety amongst the three of them will help cover all bases, and they'll all be able to see things differently and come at things differently from different angles, which will help us be a bit more of a malleable Boro. Last season it felt very much like whatever Carrick wanted to do, we did. You didn't really ever see that there'd be an alternative from Jonathan Woodgate or Grant Leadbitter. It was all very much just the same sort of thing, and everything behind Carrick was the same as well. I do feel like if something isn't working under Rob Edwards, Adi Vivesh will come at it with something completely different, as will Harry Watling. I really like the balance, I really like the variety, and I especially liked how the assistant manager and the first team coach came across. I thought they both came across incredibly well. So I was really excited coming away from it, more so from the coaching team than anything else. But yeah, they're my initial thoughts on the three of them. So I'm going to get into a few notes now that I kind of tried to gauge, a few points that have come back to my head from last night. So let's start with, I guess, Rob Edwards and what he said about his past experiences. So Rob Edwards was asked, as all three of them were, their toughest challenge in their career and what they've learnt from it. And Rob elaborated on his time at Luton Town and how big of a struggle that was. He mentioned how important his personal life is to him, his family, and that the struggles at Luton just knocked his personal life, his mental well-being, his physical health into disarray. He spoke about how it all sort of stemmed from the Tom Lockyer incident, followed by relegation and then a really tough summer. Heading into the Championship with Luton last year, he said he was just desperately trying to keep things together. Probably didn't deal with it in the best way, personally, mentally, physically. He said it just knocked him for six. And in doing so, he was trying to, work at it more. It didn't sound like he lived close to Luton, so the travelling back and forth was an issue. He was spending less time at home. And you can just see how something like that can snowball and have an effect on your personal life. And he did mention that won't be an issue at Boro. Now, I don't know if that means he's moving up here or he lives up here. I don't know. But he did stress that he won't have that problem at Middlesbrough. He said he'll be up here. He is here. And it sounds like he's going to surround himself with everything. He's going to fully embrace the club and everything that surrounds it. So that was an interesting point, that the one big issue that I think he felt didn't help him at Luton. It had a knock-on effect on everything. It's not going to be the same at Boro. Whether that means he's moving up here, he might already live closer, I don't know. But it sounds like he very much is keeping himself up here. He's embracing the area, everything that is Middlesbrough, which was really, really good to hear. They were asked about youth players, and it was, they recognised that Boro have a very good academy. We've got a good history of bringing through players, but they did stress that they'll only bring players through if they deserve it. They won't be throwing players in for the sake of it. They'll do it if they deserve it. They'll do it if they're ready, if they're good enough. It seems like Harry Watling especially has a big role to play when it comes to looking at the young players, but they're not just going to bring them through for the sake of it. They did mention there's one or two that they've already seen and spoke of from Boro's academy and from the under-21s and whatever it is that they're looking at, which is really, really exciting. They did mention there's a few within the group currently that will get their opportunities. You'd think that would be Sonny Finch, Law McCabe, etc. And they did stress the likes of Sol Bryn, Hayden Hackney, Dale Fry can be role models and prove that there is a pathway into Boro's team if they're good enough. There were rumours knocking around over the last few days that Boro had sold the Palmer twins to I think it might have been to Chelsea. I don't know if there's any truth in that, but they did name drop the Palmer twins as two really exciting players coming through, so maybe they do have a future at Boro, I don't know, but they did say that they would give players a chance if the youth players were good enough. Harry did make a point that the idea is that the players should be good enough so they don't have to pick the team. He said that the players should, if they're good enough, dictate whether the team picks itself or not, and there is not as much of an emphasis, or there hopefully won't be as much of an emphasis on them picking the team. If the players are good enough and deliver, they should pick the team themselves. So for me, that sort of said that they're not going to be the sort of coaching team who wants to tinker for the sake of tinkering. They are hoping that the players that they put trust in deliver on the pitch, and there won't be any need to make changes unless absolutely necessary, and the players will put them in a position where they don't have to change the team or tinker it around, which was an interesting point. When it comes to the squad, I found it interesting, and this could be just a coincidence that, it was the first player that came into Rob Edwards' mind. He did name drop Darragh Lenihan specifically. He was asked on the balance of youth and experience at Boro, and he said that we do have a really, really good mix, but he specifically mentioned Darragh Lenihan as an important figure for the group, and he did say that he is fit. So that tells me Darragh Lenihan, hopefully, is back in the fold. Hopefully can have a good pre-season and be a starting centre-back for Boro next season. As we know, I think he will be the club captain now. Johnny Howson is seemingly a free agent with no news on whether he'll be signed on either. I think this might be quite telling in itself that Johnny Howson won't be signing on because they alluded to the importance of Darragh Lenihan. So they didn't say he's the club captain now. They didn't say that specifically, but they did name drop him, mention that he's fit. So I think that'll definitely be a boost for Boro's defence and our whole team together, to be honest. They were also asked about a plan B, which is an interesting topic because, of course, that was something that was a big bugbear under Michael Carrick, the lack of a plan B, the lack of changes, and Adi Vivesh and Harry Watling both did discuss this. Harry said that they wanted to give, first and foremost, the players the chance to change things on the pitch, which I think was a big issue under Michael Carrick. We've discussed it. We discussed it on the Breakdown podcast quite a bit. The players need to be good enough to problem solve themselves on the fly. It can't just be down to the coaching staff, because the coaching team can have as much influence in the tunnel, in the dressing room, at half-time, from the touchline, but a lot of work has to go on the players' shoulders on the field. Now, we didn't see much of that last season. We didn't see much problem-solving from Boro's players. If the game was getting away from them, if things were happening that weren't going our way, the players didn't really address it themselves. Now, whether that's because they aren't the best problem solvers, or whether they were just so tied down to a set way of playing under Michael Carrick, they literally didn't know any other way of changing it, I don't know. But Harry Watling did stress that they have to put faith in the players to problem solve on the pitch first and foremost. However, did also say if plan A isn't working, Watling did say we need to have the ability to grind out results if necessary, which I thought was a real positive. Too often last season, doesn't matter who Boro's opposition was, whether we were at home to top of the league, away to bottom of the league, or vice versa, we would play the same way over and over again, and we just didn't seem to have the ability to grind the game out if things weren't going our way. Harry did say that was an important characteristic to have, and he did specifically say, and he used Sheffield Wednesday away as an example, that if we go there, we're not playing our best, things aren't going our way, we can't play to our strengths, we need to have the ability that if plan A isn't working, to be able to grind a result out, which is something I think the top teams have to get promoted. It just gives you them extra couple of points. It is the difference, I think, between a team finishing 8th or in the playoffs. So if we can develop that ability to grind results out when we're not playing our best, that would be a huge, huge asset for this Boro team to have. On top of that, they did discuss, tactics, changing tactics. Adi Vivesh answered this question, and he did say, a bit like what Harry Watling said, we have to trust the players first and foremost. But Adi said changes and tweaks can happen at any time. He said in games, things might not be going your way 10 minutes in, and that's the point to change the game. So I don't think he initially means substitutions as such, let's take 3 players off 10 minutes, and that's never going to happen. But the specific question was around, some managers don't change players. It was very much a hint at Carrick, I think, when the question was that managers don't often change tactic or make subs till 75 minutes. As I said, Adi did stress that they've got to give the players the chance to change things on the pitch if needed, but he said there could be tweaks and changes 10 minutes in, 15 minutes in, if you don't start the game well, if things don't happen. So that tells me there may be a more proactive approach rather than reactive. And it sort of seems like, from what I gathered, with Carrick, it was a very stubborn, set way of playing. The players had to keep repeating the same things over and over again, and nothing would change until it was decided from the touchline that things would change, which maybe didn't happen as early as it should. With these guys, they still want to trust the players. They still want to put it in their hands to do things on the field, but it sounds like they are not going to be afraid to change things early if needs be, and that doesn't even mean substitutes. As I said, Adi Vivesh mentioned making changes as early as 10 minutes in if needs be, if you don't start the game well, which was interesting. Rob also said one of the most important things when it come to his Boro team was giving the players the freedom to be brave, trusting them in their ability, giving them as much confidence to go out there and do their thing. He mentioned specifically the forward players to express themselves, which I don't think is too dissimilar to what we had under Michael Carrick, but he did stress the importance of how the players react. That was something he went quite big on. He accepts and he wants the players to accept they'll make mistakes, they'll lose the ball, they'll try something that might not come off. The only thing he asks of them is in them moments they react quickly. They don't lose the ball, head drops, their shoulders drop, and they just stand there as the ball, goes back up Boro's pitch towards our midfield or defence, and that is it. It seems like he's going to drill into the players that if Morgan Whittaker tries to dribble inside, loses the ball, if Finazaz tries to play a pass and it doesn't come off, if Tommy Conway's dispossessed, it sounds like his message is get after him, win the ball back instantly. Don't stop to think about how you've lost the ball, don't fret on it, don't worry about it, just win it back as soon as possible, go after him. So I think we'll see that a lot in pre-season. Whenever Boro players try to do something, lose the ball, lose a duel, it's a case of, do not stop to think, win the ball back, go after it quickly as soon as possible, which was interesting. That was him elaborating on, I guess, stuff he said in his interviews already about Boro being aggressive off the ball, playing intense, wanting the ball as far away from our goal as possible. He did stress that again last night. They stayed away from any particular promises. Now, this is something I think is interesting from just the whole approach from the team as a whole, I would say, thus far. They are not mentioning the P word, promotion, playoffs. They're staying clear of it. The only P word they are mentioning is progress. And I think that's a very clever word to use because it's a very broad word. Progress is different for everyone. What I think would be progress for Boro is probably a lot different from what you guys think progress would be at Boro. So they seem to be trying their best to not get suckered in to the same trap I think we did last summer, which was going all out on the message of playoffs, of promotion. And I think fans had the absolute right to expect that last season with our, the effort we made to keep our best players, retain our best players. We recruited really well. I think there was absolutely every reason to suggest that Boro should have gone for promotion and playoffs last season, even if the club didn't mention it. However, this summer, they seem to be very, very wary of doing that. Rob Edwards said specifically, he's not promising anything. He's not promising playoffs. He's not promising promotion. He can't even promise that we'll win every week. And that's, of course, that's a true message. We're not going to win every week. If we could promise that, we'd win the league and we'd win every game and we'd be promoted by February. Of course, we can't promise that we'll win every week, but he said the only thing he will promise is that the players will give their all every single week, as will he on the training pitch, which is the sort of stuff you want to hear. It's the sort of stuff we know we'll hear. So there's no real surprises in that, but I did find it interesting that the club and the people, and last night, they were not doubling down on it. They did say they want, Adi said it, Harry said it, they acknowledge they know where Boro want to be. They're not going to shy away from the fact that the goal is the Premier League. And they said getting this great club back to where it belongs, this big club back to where it belongs. All them sound bites came out, which you'd expect, but they did not put a time frame on it. They didn't say this season, they didn't say next season. Of course, if it's this season, great. I'm sure the goal from within is still playoffs at the very least. And there's no reason why that can't happen if we nail recruitment. But the one thing I've noticed is they are not going out and saying it. And I don't blame them either, because it would be an easy spike for them to fall back on if things don't go well. And it could be used as a stick to beat the coaching team with if things don't go well. So I don't blame them for not throwing words out like that. The only word they seem to be using is progress. And progress is whatever you think progress is. So it's very subjective. It's clever. It's a good approach, I would say, in my opinion. The only other thing I've got, two of the notes I've got left in regards to transfers. nothing was really mentioned, nothing on the system either. They did say, Rob stressed again, he wants to get the best out of the players here, which I think does marry up with the approach Boro have had with their recruitment, with what's been said over the last few years. They want to try and keep the continuity. They want to keep recruiting regardless of the manager. They want to keep bringing the same kind of players in. There will be a change of system, I'm pretty sure, so there is going to have to be tweaks and changes. I think Rob even said that himself. But they did, again, say they want to get the best out of the players here, utilising their strengths. So I think it is going to be more so looking at what we've got here and Edwards and his team adapting to the squad rather than the squad having to adapt to them. And I definitely think that's the best way of going, because it minimises the turnover of players needed. Even though there's going to be a huge turnover already, I think it just minimises that as much as possible, trying to make the most of what we have here. I think that maybe is a 3-4-3. That's the first formation that comes into my head, but we'll see as pre-season comes along. And the final point I've got, and it was from Edi Vivesh when asked about a potential challenge that they might face, and this was something I've not thought about, but he did make this he made this point and he elaborated on it quite a bit. But Edi Vivesh did say one of the big challenges he thinks the three of them will have, that they've probably never had at any other club before, is the travel and the distance. And he said none of them have worked at a club like Boro who are going to do the miles that we'll do next season. You know, travelling as far as we will, up and down the country, Saturday, Wednesday, Saturday, Tuesday. And he did say the one thing they'll have to learn and the one thing they'll have to try and work on is what happens if Boro have Portsmouth on a weekend. We have to travel down to Portsmouth on a Saturday. They have a home game on Tuesday. We have another away game on Wednesday. So they don't have to travel. They have an extra day's training and recovery, whereas Boro are travelling home from an away game on Wednesday night and then have to get back up to Pompey, for example, on Saturday morning. You know, how do they do that? How do they try and keep the players fresh, ensure they get just as good of a recovery, they train just as hard, they maintain the intensity, and they can also travel and maintain them levels from a Wednesday night to a Saturday if we're going up and down the country and going down to Pompey, who may have had a home game and haven't needed to travel. So there's them scenarios as well that they alluded to that could be challenges that none of them have faced before, and that is something they're going to have to try and get a grip of, which I thought was a really interesting point and one I didn't think of. So that was an interesting point from Edi Vivesh. They obviously spoke about the championship. Harry Watling mentioned how, I think they were asked on Boro's opening 5 games, and he did say, listen, every game's tough. The old championship cliches, you could play the best squad in the league when they're in a really bad run of form. You could equally play a team at the bottom with the worst squad who might be on a run of wins. So they did say, it doesn't matter really, who we play in. I guess that was them brushing off that on paper it looks like a tough start for Boro. But yeah, that's sort of all I've got. I didn't think the video would be this long. I've remembered more than I thought I would. If you've got any questions, I'll try and answer them in the comments. If there is anything that was mentioned last night that, I could answer in the comments. As I say, not much was mentioned on transfers. Not much was mentioned on specific players or the system we want to play. Mostly from Rob, it was him elaborating on what we've already heard. But I was particularly intrigued and impressed by Edi Vivesh and Harry Watling. And I do believe, honestly, that we've got a great coaching team and Rob has selected a great coaching team around him. He did say he chose the coaching team. It was his choice. He spoke to Harry. He's got to know him over the last few months. He's known Edi for years. He said he's been speaking to Edi since Luton played Coventry in the playoffs back in 2023. So they've known each other for a while, and I think he's wanted to work with Edi Vivesh for a long time now. So it's his team. It's the team he wants. He wanted a different team. He wanted something new. I think the balance is good. I think they will complement each other really well. So hopefully all the talk is good, and we'll see things start to happen on the pitch as well in pre-season. But if you've enjoyed the video, guys, do hit a like on the video, subscribe for more. Obviously, I'll do lots of other Boro content as we head through pre-season on transfers and whatnot else. I am going to the kit launch tonight, so there might be another shorter video on the kit launch tomorrow. Hopefully, we'll get to see what the new kit looks like this evening, and I'll probably have thoughts on that. But yeah, leave me any questions and comments in the comment section below. I'll try and get back to them as much as possible. But until next time, guys, take care, and I'll see you all in the next one.